Morning. It's very early. One of those early times where you just wake up at ridiculous o'clock and you can't get back to sleep. So if you're a student of a spiritual discipline, you'll probably relate to that. Getting up at 3 o'clock or 4 o'clock or 2 o'clock in the morning and it's like, not again. Why am I awake? But anyway, I'm using this opportunity to make this little video, and it could quite possibly be one of the most important videos I've ever done if I can get it out. And it has to do with using spiritual concepts as a defense, which is a stage that the mind goes through. I've seen it in me, and I see it on the internet all the time in banter between other people who are doing the course and trying to work out their own salvation and process the use of the principles and all this sort of stuff. So because fundamentally the mind is an attack and defense mechanism, the ego mind is an attack and defense mechanism, only ever giving concern to its own interests, not your interests. It's constantly drawing your allegiance towards the utilization of those attack and defense mechanisms, right? Concepts and ideas and things that it thinks will protect its longevity, therefore in its own best interest to protect your longevity, of course, until you get too close to God, in which case its perspective is, well, if I get you to commit suicide or get you to kill yourself, I'll just pop up again in your next incarnation. But make no mistake, the ego is completely insane. It loves to dangle that carrot of insanity in front of you again and again, disguised as many different things, hoping that you won't notice. And of course, when you get into spiritual territory and you're learning and trying to wrap your head around things, it's very easy to become confused or misguided or whatever you would call that in the learning process. And so the ego finds it very easy to get you to use your spiritual concepts as a defense against healing, as a defense against actually putting your finger on your own nose and taking responsibility for what's going on. So it's not a hopeless situation. Eventually you get through this stage, but it can take years and years and years. Because the actual process of learning is in application, not in mastery of the concepts. There is a certain amount of mastery of the concepts that is required, obviously, because how will you apply what you don't understand? But through the application, right, through the actual application of forgiveness, of stepping back, asking for help from within, for the healing of the mind that believes that it is the body, the shift occurs, the miracle happens, and something else, which will translate to inner peace, something else occurs in the mind to show you that what it is you're practicing is true. Right? But the ego loves to taunt you and tease you, and one of those defenses is the idea that there is no one else. Beetroot juice. I like the beetroot juice. It's not just beetroot, apple and ginger and everything, but I put a bit much beetroot in this one. It just tastes like beetroot with a bit of ginger. One of the defenses is that there's no one else. So if you're, and this video is really more for the advanced student, I would say. Those who've gone through the workbook, those who've put some considerable effort into their transformation and their process, and they've actually seen what I'm talking about in the play out of it, whether online or whether in your own experience. I have it all the time. All the time it comes back to me, especially with new course students, and I'll be talking as I am now, right? It's impossible to make a video, to express, to do anything without that occurring in the duality of things, the me and the you. Okay. And inevitably, I always get the results of my thinking in that, which is, especially from new course, oh, there's no one else. It's only you. You're only teaching to you. You're only talking to you. All of this sort of stuff. And it's like, yes, but healing is always shared. Right? Now, here's the thing. It's like Ramana Maharshi would say, there are no others. Okay? This is a form of spiritual bypass. This is a form of spiritual avoidance. Okay? If somebody were to be teaching something to me and telling me something and offering me something that they thought would be in my own best interests, or whether they did or they didn't think it was in my best interest, and I would say to them, there's only you, right? Or there are no others, and point it back at them, ping pong it back to them, right? It's like spiritual ping pong. You can play that all day, right? If I was to ping pong it back to them, there is only you. I'm missing the opportunity to hear what it is that's being presented, right? Now, I would only ever want to point it back out there, point the finger that way, if I thought there was actually somebody else out there, right? Which means I'm making the same mistake I'm accusing them of making by pointing the finger to me. Okay? It's the same error. Now, in a sense, it's an error, and in a sense, it's not an error. If someone is coming to me and teaching to me and offering me something, and I want to do that and point it back to them, right? It's only because I'm attempting to defend myself against what I think is occurring in a dream. Can you hear that? Can you hear that? Luckily, salvation's a game that happy children play. Now, let me give you a reference. Jesus walked across the hills of Galilee, right, around the Dead Sea, and taught to the masses. He instructed his disciples to go out and teach them, right? If you are loyal and believe in me, go and feed my sheep, right? So he would hardly have done that. Jesus would not have done that if he knew that it was only him, right? He could just sit in a circle, sit by himself and process his own thinking here rather than having to go out and teach others, right? But thoughts are increased by sharing, right? A thought is increased by sharing, and a thought of love through forgiveness is definitely worth sharing, okay? Now, as you be about as a teacher of God, as I be about the process of sharing these ideas that embody the notion of love through forgiveness, I'm going to come into contact with all sorts of reflections of my thinking, all sorts of ideas about myself presented through other people, that some are going to be, the parable of casting the seeds. Some are going to be like the seeds that fall in the cracks and don't bear any sort of growth, and some are going to fall on fertile soil, and some are going to be choked by the weeds and whatever the parable was, I forget exactly. But don't be concerned about that. I'm not concerned about it. I'm going to have people stand in front of me and say, oh, there's only you, dear one, pointing their finger outwardly. And that's an opportunity for me, in my defenselessness, to stand there and accept, yep, okay, thank you, there is only me. There is only one mind waking up. Okay? The point of the application of all of these lessons, of all of these principles, and the idea of love through forgiveness is so I can escape from the cycle of reincarnation, illusory or otherwise. Okay? There is no reincarnation, just like there is no world. If there is no world, how can there be reincarnation? It's just as false as anything else. Right? But the idea of being born into one body or many bodies is just as false as the idea of being in this body now making this video. I'm not. It's a paradox, right? And it's an illusion, but you don't escape the paradox or the illusion. Conceptually, you have to have the experience. Once you've had the experience, you'll realize there is only one mind. There is only one, right? And then you may, perhaps like me, come back here or find yourself back here to teach this in the process of purification of the residual denial. Okay? So you can have enlightenment two ways. Ultimately, it's by the grace of God, but it occurs two ways. Through the dark night of the soul, which happened to me, where I had my enlightenment first and then was given the process, the means, through A Course in Miracles to purify the mind afterwards, or through the purification of the mind first and then the experience. Okay? And the experience can happen at any point. It doesn't necessarily like, I finished a workbook and now I'm going to have the experience. It's not really like that. It's some see it on death and rise to teach it, and some see it in lessons of this course, and some see it in experience that's beyond the world, all those things that it says in the course. It can happen at any point. So when I'm being presented with something, the temptation to want to say, take my finger off my own nose and say, oh, well, there's only you, dear one. You're only talking to yourself, dear one, right? That's duality. All of a sudden, I've made the same mistake that person is making. Not that they're actually making a mistake, because to me, they're a figure in my dream showing up to tell me something I've asked them to say. I've asked to hear what they have to say. But my choice, my decision-making in the situation is that person is either separate from me, in which case I can take my finger off my nose and point at them and say, you blah, 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 or that person is me and I keep my finger here. Okay? Now, what happens is when you, let's say you make a declaration, and all of my posts are declarations, right? I'm not talking to anyone out there. All that's occurring in any post I've ever made is an expression of the certainty of my mind based on the experience I've had that there is only one, in all sorts of different forms and associations. And it permeates throughout the dark cosmos, bringing light to the darkness somewhere and bringing back to me a reflection of my own denial, at which I'm either going to keep my finger here and accept it in defenselessness, or I'm going to want to put my finger out there and go, that's your problem, not my problem, right? Which creates duality again, which manifests duality again. So I don't want to do that. Right? My purpose is forgiveness. My purpose is to be happy. My purpose is to have inner peace. And so I keep my finger on my own nose. Everyone and everything I see is a figure in my dream. Why would you react at all to figures in a dream you knew you were dreaming? Okay. Now, there's a bit of, I want to call it level confusion. It's not really. It's there's a little bit of adjusting that goes on with every specific situation that shows up. So I'll have people show up that know nothing about A Course in Miracles. I'll have people show up that have studied it for decades, all this sorts of stuff, or any spiritual discipline for that matter. They could be a Buddhist master or a Hindu aspirant, anything like that. But I'll have people show up, and specifically on my spiritual page on Facebook, which I've set up specifically for this interaction to occur, that'll show up and present me an idea. Okay? And the temptation is for me to want to say, not really anymore, this is like I'm making this video post that stage, hopefully. Hopefully. The temptation is for me to want to do this. Oh, that's blah, blah, blah. That, I see where you're at, right? Now, here's the thing with healing. Physician, heal thyself. Okay, and I love Joel Goldsmith. If you haven't ever read The Infinite Way by Joel Goldsmith, you'll love it. And also, you'll love it. I love it. And also in the idea of, it used to be in a separate little thin book called Psychotherapy and Prayer Practice and Purpose, or something like that, little dark green book, which was a supplement to A Course in Miracles. And now I think it's included in the blue book from Foundation for Inner Peace. So if you go on the Foundation for Inner Peace website and order the Course in Miracles book, I'm pretty sure it's included in there. And it's the little pamphlet that talks about specific guidance for psychotherapists, right? Psychologists, psychotherapists, people in the actual medical field, where Jesus is saying that the sole responsibility, and this is in the Course as well, obviously, but the sole responsibility of the miracle worker or the psychotherapist is to accept the healing for themselves, right? In that, because my purpose is to go from duality to singularity, from duality, the belief in separation, to the belief in oneness, or the experience of oneness, hopefully, I'm accepting atonement, at one-ment, for myself in any given situation that shows up, okay? Especially the ones that show up that trigger me, right? They're the ones where I need to apply forgiveness, sit still, breathe, feel it, all that sort of stuff, and have the release through that action of willingness to forgive. But I'm accepting atonement for myself, okay? There's not a patient coming into my office who's sitting there. There's an idea I have in my own mind of separation of me as a healer, let's say, and that person as a patient, when in actual fact it's the opposite. That person is my teacher. They're bringing me a situation, event, story, right? They're bringing me a story about a situation, event, or whatever seems to be going on, for me to look at, for me to take responsibility for and accept at one-ment with. I am at one with this. I'm going to accept atonement at one-ment. Okay? I am one with it. And you're in that, you are dropping that reference of a me and a you, and accepting that it's all me. Everything is I and I. Okay? Like the Rasta man, I and I. Right? There's not you and I, there's I and I. Right? So, in that, I bring the nature of the healing event to a singular perspective. Okay? From that singular perspective, I allow the flow of that which is singular in me to do whatever it needs to do in that situation. But if I'm still in the mindset of duality, of a me and a you, nothing can flow, because the me and a you is separation. It is the idea of breaking the flow. It is the idea of we're not connected, right? For healing to occur, and it will occur naturally, I need the connection to be what it is. It's already there, but in my unawareness of it, because I've chosen to do this, right, it can't flow through me into that situation and complete the vibratory loop, if you like, or the vibratory giving and receiving process that I'm there to facilitate. I hope that makes sense. You're probably going to have to watch this video a few times. I'm probably going to have to watch this video. It's a bit of a head fuck, right? It's a bit of a head fuck, because in the imagery, when I look at the imagery, there seems to be others, right? And yes, they are there, and no, they are not there. It's both things. It's all inclusive. It's altruistic, right? I seem to see things and I include them in as they appear as separate from me, but knowing that they're not. Okay? So in the Course, Jesus says, you must believe in the world you think you see, but know that it's not your reality. Okay, so I accept the world exactly as it is. It seems to be somebody separate from me. They're sitting here, they're telling me a story, they're upset, they've got a problem, whatever. They're asking me for help and guidance and whatever it is. And it's like, if I sit and own that, if I sit and keep my finger on my nose and just listen without feeling like I need to say something from the Course, listen without feeling like I've got to fix somebody or change something or do anything. Just listen, let it in, truly let it in. It's just energy, it's just a vibration. All the words are symbols of symbols representing something I've projected out there, which is now coming back to me for inclusion, okay, and joining. And I accept that, right? And I just listen and I let it in, right? In my idea of letting it in, right, as the reflection or as the coming back of what it is I've projected out there, symbolically, I'm accepting atonement for myself at one-ment. I'm not separate from this person, this situation, this event. This brother is presenting me my script, my story, my ideas, because I am mind. I'm not a Dave. I'm not this body sitting here playing the part of healer. I am mind, right? I've been projecting out, and then I find salvation, and now I'm bringing back in. Okay, the universe is expanding out. All of a sudden there's the resurrection. Now it's shrinking back in. Okay, from source extending and back to source again. So, and that's the idea of healing, of course. But so the idea then of wanting to offer the patient or the student something useful may occur, right? But I first have to take on board, this is my teacher. This is the person that's coming to offer me a moment of healing as one mind healing, as Christ mind awakening. I hope that makes sense. It'll make sense more and more as you begin to have more experiences and begin to have more revelations of the nature of what life actually is. And that's occurring now throughout the world. People are writing to me all the time now saying, oh, I had an experience. I was walking down the street and something disappeared or appeared, and I heard voices, and I'm hearing a voice telling me things, what to do. That's happening all the time now. I mean, in the old days, they would lock you up. They put you in the asylum and give you some sort of medication to help you. But now with our new understanding, with our new comprehension that there's more going on here than meets the eye, and our minds are beginning to open and broaden and become more inclusive towards the more subtle energies and frequencies of life that are all around us, that are actually attempting to get our attention to a point of total focus. We realized that we were insane before we started hearing the voice. Before we started seeing things appearing and disappearing, and whatever it is, I mean, there's a stage that'll occur if you're doing these lessons properly. There is a stage that'll occur, and doing these lessons properly comes with the caveat that you're willing to give up the world and follow me, right? That's Jesus. Give up the world and follow me. If you're doing these lessons without the willingness to give up the world and follow me, nothing's going to change. You can't serve two masters. You can't have a foot in both camps. You know, so give up the world and follow me isn't actually a physical giving up, although if you do decide to divest yourself of all your worldly possessions and walk out your front door like St. Francis of Assisi, so be it. But the idea of giving up the world is the idea of giving up the meaning that I've placed in everything in the world, which is what will occur through the use of the lessons in the workbook of A Course in Miracles. You'll find that you just doing lesson 10, my thoughts about this and that don't mean anything. Lesson 1, nothing I see means anything. And you start to retrain or untrain your mind from its errant learnings that you've picked up badly along the way before, and take on board a new perspective from which to view yourself and the world and the whole. And of course, that'll be a transition where you slowly go from one to the other. All right, you slowly, here's the old world, and then you come across these new ideas, and they, you know, that's probably not a very good example. I don't know what I'm doing there. But it's a transition. You'll notice that at first during your transition, and I know I said I was going to make this for the more advanced soul, but here's one for the beginners. In the beginning, you'll notice that your old thought system is very strong still, and you want to cling to it as a way of dealing with things that keep showing up. But as you transition, you'll notice that you begin to put a little bit of faith in the new thought system, and you start to apply the principles of it, and before you know it, you've only got the new thought system. So anyway, I hope that's helpful, this video. Keep my finger on my nose. Keep your finger on your nose. If we all kept our finger on our nose and stopped pointing it at others, the world would collapse in on itself very, very quickly, and we'd find ourselves back in eternity where we never left. It's a game happy children play, I tell you. All right, I love you. Peace.